Okay. So yesterday we went through Scrum in a nutshell and started talking about the rules. Do we have any questions? Any question from yesterday? Okay, so who can explain to me Scrum in a nutshell? Who is bold enough to explain Scrum in a nutshell? Mohammed. Okay, I can see Mohammed and Abigail. Let's start to Mohammed.
So Scrum is a branch of an agile way of executing the project. So and it's when you have broken the part of the project into smaller bits, and you put up a team of similar skills and functionalities to execute those tasks.
Okay. You are giving us a synoptic summary. Okay, thank you. Abigail.
Hi, Sarah. Can you provide?
Yes, we can hear you.
Scrum is a framework that supports business processes, helping them get more value, even from complex problems. It looks at a complex problem and, try to take it in bits called iteration. It has a Scrum team that is basically made up of the Scrum Master, the product owner, and the developers. Yeah. And in it, you also have the Scrum events, like the sprint planning, the daily Scrum, the sprint review, the sprint retrospective, and the backlog refinement. And what else? Some of the artifacts, some of the artifacts within the Scrum initiative would be the product backlog, the sprint backlog, and the done increments. These are like deliverables, like tangibles that you can, see and work with within a Scrum. It is able to confirm if a particular sprint has been successful via the definition of. Okay, now I'm confused. Is it definition of ready or definition of done? Definition of done.
Definition of done.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good. Well done, Abigail. Good. Okay, so that's very good. 1 second. Okay, so that's very good. So we did that Scrum in a nutshell. That is Scrum for you. There is nothing else to Scrum, right? Anything I'm going to be teaching you after from today, like after 30 minutes, is going to be things that will just help you, things that people use, right, while using the Scrum framework. So things like user story, things like estimation, things like getting velocity, burn down charts. Those are the things that is being used in the team to help, right? So Scrum itself, this is Scrum, okay? So I'm going to be teaching all those things, but I just want to be sure that you guys understand the Scrum very well before going into those things, okay? So we talked about all this yesterday, what is expected of a Scrum Master, what is expected of a product owner. I also said that I'll send you guys a product checklist, product owner checklist, Scrum Master checklist. I've sent that this evening to Babs Kenke. So I guess you guys will receive it, maybe at the end of today or tomorrow. What the developers, what the characteristics of the developers, right? We talk about the different Scrum events that are available. which is sprint planning, daily scrum, sprint review, sprint retrospective. I also told you about the backlog refinement, right? For the sprint planning, I told you that it's the Scrum team that needs to attend. It's 2 to 8 hours. It's always time box. Remember what I said about time box, right? When I say time box, I said that is like the maximum time, right? The event cannot take no more than that maximum amount of time. So if you are doing a 1 month sprint, your sprint planning should not be more than 8 hours. I'm saying this because of the exam. You need to remember, right? But I'm saying that on a normal day at work, it's not like you plan a sprint planning for 8 hours. You can break it down, right? But what they are saying is the time box is 8 hours. So if you're doing a 2-week sprint, the time box for sprint planning will be 4 hours. You discuss what will be done in this sprint, right? How do we select the work to get done? So by the time we do the simulation, you'll see some of the examples. And we'll talk about the outcomes, your sprint goal, right? How the work will be done, and your sprint backlog. The sprint backlog is committed by the sprint, right? The developers, the development team, they are the owner of the sprint backlog, right? Daily Scrum, 15 minutes. The time box for daily Scrum is 15 minutes, right? You make sure that you don't want them to spend more than 15 minutes. If someone is talking too much or they are giving too much details, you want to make sure that you tell them that every other thing we'll discuss later after the daily stand-up, right? You tell them that let's put it in the parking lot. This will be discussed after, okay? After the time box, team members can continue detailed discussion to answer questions, solve problems, refine the design, or adapt the remaining sprint work, okay? We'll talk about the sprint review. It's a 1 to 4 hours. So if you're doing a 1 month sprint, it's going to be 4 hours. If you're doing a 2-week sprint, it's going to be 2 hours, right? And it also happens once per sprint. And I told you it happens on the last day of the sprint, right? We're going to do a sample of the sprint review. And sprint retrospective is on the last day as well, 1 to 3 hours, right? It's also time box. All the events in sprint is time box. Okay. And I said the Scrum Master is an active participant of the retrospective. We are also going to do an example of that. Okay. Scrum artifacts. We said that we have 3 Scrum artifacts. We have what we call the product backlog, the sprint backlog, and the product increment, right? We know that the product backlog, what is most important to build next? All those feedbacks that you're getting during the sprint review, you add it to your product backlog. 1 product owner, 1 product backlog for 1 product, right? And remember that the products backlog is just an artifact that answers all the questions of what is key, right, to the users, what they want to see. And remember, who is accountable for this? The product owner. Product backlog refinements. Product owner and development team collaborate to refine the product backlog. So remember that things will continue to evolve. They are constantly evolving, right? The product owner will collaborate with the developers to keep refining the ideas and adding more details to it in the backlog, right? Remember, the development team will be the one to provide estimates for those things in the backlog because they are the one that will actually do the work. I'll show you how estimation is done. Refinement is an ongoing activity throughout the life of a product backlog. So as long as you have a product backlog, you will continue to refine that backlog. Product backlog occurs during the sprint. Remember when I did the box yesterday that I showed you, I put in 10 boxes. I told you that refinements can happen in day 5 or day 6 or day 7, depending on your organization, depending on what you guys agree, right? But it must happen before you start that next sprint because everything you do as you are refining, you are getting ready for the next sprint, right? It's not like you're going to finish before you have to do refinement before you start the next sprint. So you must have done that refinement within the sprints, okay? So same thing too for backlog refinement, right? What Scrum says is that you should do backlog refinement, but over time, this is what happens, right? This is also happens one per sprint. Some people do 2 times, right? Usually happen at the midpoint of the sprint. I said like day 5, day 6, depending on the organization you are in, right? The PO will present the ordered backlog, identify PBI that they would like in the next sprint. Development team will ask the right questions, request additional details if needed. Any PBI that has enough information is sized by the development team in the session. That's what we call the estimate it, to have an idea. If the story is a small story, if it's a large story, right, they want to estimate it. Some people will use what we call the Fibonacci series, right? Some people will use hours, depending on the team, depending on the organization you are, okay? And the output will be the list of PBI clarification and questions that needs to be answered. The Scrum Master ensures this event takes place and is well facilitated. Scrum Master also ensures that this is time box, that people adhere to the time box as well. Okay? Sprint backlog. Now, remember we said the product backlog will require everything that you need to achieve the product vision is what we put in the product backlog. The sprint backlog is just a subset of the product backlog, right? And it involves only the stories that need to be achieved during the subsequent sprint, right? So when you're saying that you're doing sprint 1, your sprint backlog is for that sprint 1. When you start sprint 2, you have another sprint backlog for sprint 2, right? So this is just another way again. Product backlog, anything that you need to accomplish the project vision, right? But this just focus on the sprint goal. What do you want to achieve in the next 2 weeks? That's your goal for the sprint. The product owner owns the product backlog. The development team owns the sprint backlog. Contains requirement defect tasks. So what they're saying is that the product backlog contains everything you want to do, everything, the feedback from the stakeholders, everything is there. But this just contains what has been prioritized by the product owner that we are going to achieve in the next 2 weeks. Everyone contributes to the product backlog. Only development team contribute to the sprint backlog because they have to commit to the work. They have to agree that they are the one getting they are agreeing that they will get this job done, right? So product backlog refinement meeting is to refine the product backlog. Sprint planning meeting is to refine the sprint backlog items in readiness for that sprint, right? So this is the difference between the two. And the last one is just product increment, right? So this is what you release at the end of the 2 weeks. Like what were you able to achieve at the end of that 2 weeks? That's your product increment, right? Another thing I'm going to say, someone asked the question yesterday that is it a mandatory thing that every time you have an increment every 2 weeks that must go into production? It is not mandatory, right? So you can have what we call release planning. I'm going to show you, right? You have a release plan. Let's say your first MVP, your release plan is after, let's say it's 3 months, right? So in 3 months, how many sprints? If you are doing 2 week sprint, that means in 3 months, you will have 2, 4, 6, 8. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have 6 sprints, right? So that means that for you to go to production, 6 sprints must happen. So the first sprint, your increment you have is the second sprint, you add your increment, the third sprint, you had your increment, fourth sprint, fifth sprint, and the sixth sprint, until all that is now done before you now go to production. So it's not mandatory that your 2 weeks increment will go to production. Okay? So this will bring us to the end of Scrum. So now we want to now talk about the things that will help you achieve, like when you're working in a Scrum team, things that you will experience. You're a Salesforce consultant, you are working as a product owner in a Scrum team. You need to know about user stories. You need to know how to write a proper user stories, right? You are a Scrum master. You need to be able to teach. You need to be able to coach your team how to put a proper user story together, how to put proper details to a story. Okay, so yes, Scrum Master, you say, oh, but why? I don't need to write stories. Yes, but if your team requires you to teach them, if your team requires that knowledge, if your product owner doesn't know how to put it together, then you have to coach them. You have to put those things in the right perspective for them. Okay. Any question before we now go into this? Any question on Scrum? You know, I told you Scrum is very lightweight, very easy, right? Lightweight, easy, but very very difficult to master, but it's very easy. And that's all on Scrum. Any question before we start going into the details? No question? Ose?
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, you said the sprint backlog happens after the product backlog. So within that same, like, because last time you had said you fix yours, I think within like between like week 5, week 6. So it happens.
Not week, day 5, day 6.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Day 5, day 6. Yeah. So it happens within that time frame as well.
Yes. So the sprint backlog there's no sprint backlog, it's sprint planning. Right? Sprint backlog is just the artifact that comes out of your sprint planning, okay, on day 1. So your sprint backlog comes out of your sprint planning on day 1, and that's the work that will be done for the 2 weeks.
Oh, sorry, I meant the sprint backlog review. I think that's what you said, because you said there's a review.
Yes, so they're just saying that the sprint planning is what they use to review the sprint backlog. So the sprint backlog is just like is the outcome from the sprint planning. So when you finish sprint planning, you come up at the end of that sprint planning, you have sprint goal, you have your backlog and how you want to implement that work.
Okay, and do you review that like every day? Because there's something you said.
Yeah, you can review it every day. You can review it every day because sometimes you'll have overcommitted, so you can renegotiate. You can also, as you are having daily Scrum, you are discussing, you are getting, maybe you have more questions. The product owner will explain more again. So you have more understanding of what you're doing again. So that's why we are inspecting and adapting every day, right? Till we finish that sprint. Mohammed. Okay. Mohammed.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So my question is about okay, when with what we've learned now, so is it going to be? I'm just trying to ask how we're going to, like, okay, for example, introduce yourself, like, oh, I am a Scrum master. Is it that I'm into agile process of? Sorry.
Someone
can I continue?
Yeah, you can continue, man.
Okay, so would I say, oh, after this now, would I say, oh, yes, I'm into agile process or methodology of executing a project, and my emphasis is on Scrum. Is how I'm going to put it?
Yeah. So so when they ask the question like, do you understand how to implement a project using agile methodologies? You say yes. And if they ask you which of the framework have you used, you said I've used the Scrum framework. I've worked within a Scrum team. So they know that you understand how that process operates. So next week, what we are going to do throughout next week is a simulation. So I sent something, I'm going to show you that email I sent out now, right? So we're going to walk through that simulation next week. We're going to take a subject. So what we're doing is we're going to start from the beginning, right? So what happens even before the sprint starts? We're going to walk through it. You're given a new project. How do you go about it? What do you do, right? Then we'll go through that sprint 0. Most organizations call it sprint 0. Sprint 0 is not part of Scrum, but it's what you do before you start the Scrum, right? We go through it, then we go through normal Scrum to show what happens now. And you'll also be watching some videos to make it stick, right? So that's what we're going to do throughout next week. Now, in some scenario, and I'll also be asking questions that what if you get to an organization and it's already in existence? How do you just plug yourself in? Because you understand what is happening, you just want to ask the right question. So what sprint are we now? How do you guys estimate? You know, because you will have done all that here, then you get used to it, you get familiar with it, okay?
Okay, thank you. Then sorry, my last question before you go is that after learning the Scrum, is it I know we have a project management next, but is it in my own perception, I think project management is something that should be learned, when you've already done a little bit of practice with experience. So is it that I should also still, join the project management now, or probably use all these, get a job, practice, get the experience, then probably come in the next cohort to learn the project management, or what's supposed to be like?
You can learn the two. It's fine. I'm not teaching you project management to go and write the exam. I'm just going to teach you in case you find yourself in a situation where you are like the delivery manager, like you are the one delivering that Salesforce implementation. What are the things you should quickly identify that you can do? So what I want to focus on is give you a synoptic about project management. What are the things you should be focusing on and how you should go about it? So that's what I'm going to focus on, right? For people that want to do the exam, I'll give you the right tips to go write the exam, what you need to learn and all that, if you want to go deep into the exam. Okay?
Okay, thank you very much. All right.
Yeah. So is it possible to have uncompleted item in sprint backlog during a sprint? What happens to the uncompleted tasks and backlog after the sprint? Good question, Livingstone. Yes, it is very possible that you're going to have item that is not completed. And what happens most of the time is you either move them to the next sprint or you move them back to the backlog. Okay, so depending on if the product owner says that those items should be done first, then they go to the next sprint. If they are not prioritized for the next sprint, then they go back to the backlog to when next we can do them. Okay, so it's very possible to have uncompleted stories, which is advisable to do between PSM and CSM. So PSM and CSM, so CSM is Scrum Alliance, PSM is Scrum.org. Ken and Jeff, they are both the two people I told you in the history of Scrum that wrote Scrum guide, right? So if you do CSM, PSM, both of them is fine. CSM is more expensive. CSM is about $900 to $1,000, and you have to attend a 2-day workshop. That's the way Scrum Alliance has built it, right? You attend a 2-day workshop, and you, at the end of the day, they give you like some questions, you answer, and you get your CSM certification. But PSM, you can go to scrum.org, right, and do your PSM. You answer you read the Scrum guide, you answer the questions. Let me just go there. They have a lot of practice questions that you can use to practice, right? So this is what scrum.org looks like, right? They have the training, certifications, right? You can go there, look for all the certifications, and you write your PSM one. So your PSM one is the same thing as your CSM, right? Advanced CSM is the same thing as your PSM too. So the exam you want to write is the Professional Scrum Master, right? This is what you need to know. You can buy. Is $150. The passing rate is 85%, is 60 minutes, right? So now, if you do this exam, right, you have your PSM one. What I taught you in class is enough for you to write this exam. What you just need to do is you need to read the Scrum guide. I always advise people to read the Scrum guide, right? So this is the Scrum guide, right? Ken, Schweber, and Jeff, both of them. So one is Alliance, one is .org. They were together in Alliance before they broke out, right? Because some of the there was a bit of maybe disagreement, right? So because in Professional Scrum Master, when you get the certification, you have it for life, right? But in CSM, you have to renew every two years. Okay, in CSM, you have to keep renewing every 2 years. Both are very good. CSM was very popular in those days, but now PSM is catching up like wildfire, right? A lot of people have PSM 1 now, right? So if you feel you still want to do CSM, then you have to go for the 2 days workshop. You have to get a trainer from the Scrum Alliance for that 2 days workshop, right? But if not, you read your Scrum guide, you follow what I've taught you, and you write the exam. You do some practice questions. You see practice questions as well. I think you can, and they have a lot of information here as well, and you can write the exam. If you go to prepare, you can take assessments, right? You take the assessments, you click on PSM1. Wait. No, practice, take Scrum open assessments. So you can start taking questions. They'll give you 30 questions. You start, you finish it, you start again, you finish it till you are very comfortable. And what is in the Scrum guide? This is what is in the Scrum guide, right? Scrum definition. We've talked about Scrum definition. Scrum theory. We talk about the Scrum theory that is based on empirical formula, transparency, inspection, and adaptation. We talked about the Scrum values: commitment, focus, openness, respect, and courage. We talk about the Scrum team, the developers, right? The product owner, the Scrum master. That's it. We talk about the Scrum event, which is the sprint, the heartbeat of Scrum. We talk about sprint planning. We talk about daily Scrum, sprint review, sprint retrospective. We talk about the Scrum artifacts, product backlog, commitment of the product goal, sprint backlog, commitment of the sprint goal, increments, commitment of definition of done. And that is it. That's what is in the Scrum guide. That's what you need to write the exam, right? What I did for you again is I did a Scrum, Synoptic Scrum handbook, right? Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I put a Scrum handbook for you guys together, right? But from here, I started from Agile. What is Agile? I talked about the Agile manifest, the Agile values, which are known as the Agile manifestos, the Agile principles. We talk about the relationship between Agile and Scrum, all the things I taught you in class. How the most commonly used Agile methodologies. I talked about what Scrum is, right? What Scrum is not. I talked about the Scrum values. I talked about the Scrum rules, right? All the different rules, what you need to know and all that. I had the checklist to it, right? All the checklists I added. I talked about the product owner. I talked about the Scrum events. I added more details for you. Sprint planning, what the things you need to know, how many people, all those details are there. Daily Scrum, sprint review, retrospective, product backlog, backlog refinement, all the things I taught in class, I added to the sprint backlog, the product increments, and I added a lot of references for you, right? That you can always review or learn more, and added some books. And I added the checklist, just in case you're saying the link doesn't work. I added the checklist as a separate, PDF. Then I added the simulation. This is the simulation I want you to read against next week. This is what we're going to use for our simulation next week. Please, 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 please read it, okay? This is what we're going to use. They will send this to you, right? This is what we're going to use. And I want you to come up with, when you finish reading the simulation, is you'll come up with product vision, right? This is an examples of product vision that we mentioned: product elevation pitch, vision board, vision box. You come up with the milestones from what you read, who the stakeholders are, what is out of scope, and you recommend a team structure and constraints. So from there, we'll start the class on Monday. Okay? Any questions before? Okay, I'll check the chat. Why can I get this material for exam prep? Where? Okay. No, I sent it to you already. No, I didn't send it to you. I sent it to Babskensky to send to you. Okay. So I guess I just sent it to him this evening. So he will send everything to you by the end of today. Okay. Any question?
So this is a project we're meant to submit to you, but it's just like a practice.
So you bring it to class on Monday. I'll ask about it on Monday. If you practice it, if you get it ready on Monday, it will be easier and faster for us. Okay? Any questions from anyone again? Okay, so before we go ahead, we're going to do some Kahoots. Just for me to gauge a bit of your understanding on Scrum, right? Before we now move. So because the other things I'm going to teach you is just to help you, right? And I know they are important as well. So we'll start there. We'll start on that. But before we go ahead, let's do a bit of Kahoot, right? Then we'll take it from there. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so you will see the pin 4229021. So you go to kahoot.it. Yeah, I can see people coming in here. They say General T. Good. Okay. I'm waiting for more people to join. Don't be scared. It's just to help you. Even if you don't get the question, just see it. Just, get an understanding of it. And, as we practice, you learn again. Okay? Okay, so let's start. I think people are scared of trying the questions. So you go to kahoot.it and you put your name and your PIN, 4229021. Okay, so let's start. Question 1. What does it mean to say that an event has a time box? The questions are harder this time around, right? This is Scrum. It's simple but difficult to master. But this will help you, okay? The event can take no more than a maximum amount of this time. So when you say something is time box, it means that it cannot pass that time. So if you're going to do sprint, what's the password? 4229021. 4229021. So you cannot pass that time. So the answer is the event can take no more than a maximum amount of time. Okay? Okay, I hope you understand what time box is now for those that missed it, right? So we're doing this for you to understand, right? Okay, good. So we have K, Mohammed, Shane, Ose, and Warrior. Okay, let's go ahead. Okay, it's an opportunity for you to learn. The time box for the sprint planning event is it can be confusing. Good job, good job. For those that pick 4 hours, so this is what the exam looks like. So you have to understand how to interpret some of the questions. So if they say the time box for sprint planning events is 4, if you say 4 hours, 4 hours for what kind of sprints, right? So you have to understand because it can be for a monthly sprint, you already know it's 8 hours. For a shorter sprint, for like 2 week sprint, is 4 hours. So that 4 hours is not the best answer. So in this scenario, the answer is not like, yeah, it's not, you're not looking at this is the answer. You are looking for which one is the best answer to that question, okay? And this is how the Scrum exam looks like. Okay, this is a tip of what the exam looks like. So you see option, you think you have seen the answer, but look at it well to be sure that you're picking the best answer. Okay, so the best answer here is 8 hours for a monthly sprint. For shorter sprints, it is usually shorter. So for a 2-week sprint, it will be 4 hours. Okay, we'll do the next question now. Hey, you missed that question. I can see that you are out of the race here. So hopefully you come back, okay? Saying Mohammed, Warrior, Eki, LP. Okay, question number 3. Who has the final say on the order of the product backlog? Good job. More people got it. It's not the Scrum Master. For those people those 5 people that pick Scrum Master, the product backlog, the final say is the product owner. Okay? Good job saying Mohammed, Warrior, Eki, and Abby. Yeah, also you climbed 5 places up. Well done. Okay, let's see. Question 4. Upon what type of process control is Scrum based? Good job. Empirical process. Empirical process. Good job. Good job. Good job. 6 players are on fire. We've answered 3 questions correctly. Warrior, Eki, Louise, Abby, Abolaji. Well done. Well done. Question 5 is a multi-select answer. So you are not picking one answer here. You are picking more than one answer. The question is, who is on the Scrum team? Good job. Those 11 people that pick project manager. There's no project manager on the Scrum team. The product owner, Scrum master, and the developers. Okay? Good job. So we have Eki taking over. 12 players on. So I know people, you are not on the board, but I can see that a lot of people are getting it. So we have 12 players. We have Eki. Eki took over the board from Warrior. Okay, let's see. Question number 6. Which one of the following is not an artifact in Scrum? Which one is not an artifact? Good job, good job. So we have sprint backlog, and product increment. Release is not an artifact in Scrum. Good job. Okay, the board is still remaining the same way. Like, you guys don't want to leave the board. Good job. The time box for a daily Scrum is 15 minutes. Good job. For those people that pick 4 hours, 4 hours, daily Scrum. We are talking about daily Scrum. Daily Scrum is 15 minutes. Good job. Ose is back on the board. Sin is back with answering 3 straight questions correctly. Eki is still leading. Question number 8 is a multi-select question. The 3 pillars of empiricism are multi-selects. Good job. Hey, planning 21 people. From where? Adaptation, inspection, and transparency. That's the answer. Planning is not part of it. Okay? The Scrum theory, the 3 pillars is adaptation, inspection, and transparency. Okay? Someone has dropped out of the board. Ida is making a comeback. Eki is still leading. And I can see Abi, Abolaji, Louis, team, they all came up. Okay, true or false? It is mandatory that the product increments be released to production at the end of each sprint. True or false? The answer is false. I still said this today. Not true. It's false. I said you can have up to 6 sprints before you release to production. Okay? So we still have Eki, Abi, Liz. Abi is now on the board. K is back in the game. Question number 10. Which description best fits the role of a product owner? One name from these options will you give a product owner? Really? Requirement collector? No way. It's not a business analyst. Requirement collector is part of his job, but that's not the best role, right? The product owner can be any of this, but the best role here is value maximizer. Remember when I told you guys that it's going to prioritize the backlog based on value, right? So value maximizer is the correct answer. That's what suits the product owner. That's what best fit is, right? Is always looking at what is valuable, right, to the stakeholder. So Abby got that and she's up here. Eki still got that. Okay, good job. Which of the following is responsible for the sprint backlog in Scrum? Which of the following is responsible for sprint backlog? The answer is developers. The development team are responsible for the sprint backlog. The way the product owner is accountable for the product backlog. Okay? So Eki, Abi, Slim, and General. General, welcome to the board. We have Yak has answered 3 questions correctly. 2 more questions to go. True or false? Agile is another name of Scrum. Yes, correct. False. Agile is not another name for Scrum. Scrum is a framework, agile that supports the agile methodology, right? That support the agile mindset. Good, good. Our board still remains the same. Mia is making comeback with 3 in a row. This is the last question. Okay, it's a true or false question. The purpose of the sprint is to produce valuable and useful increments of a working product. True or false? Good job. The answer is true. Good job. Good job. So let's see what the podium looks like. For the podium, in the 3rd place, we have Abby. In the 2nd place, we have Abby with R. And in the 1st place, we have Eki. Well done, guys. And the runner-up, we have Slim and General. Well done, well done, well done. I know the question can be on the top side, so well done. It's just for you to learn more, okay? So if you want to practice more questions, you go to scrum.org and you start assessment, okay? It will give you questions and you continue 30 questions per round, and it will give you a 30-minute time limit to answer the questions, okay? So if you want to do more questions, just go to scrum.org and you can practice more questions, okay? So you can do that, okay? But before you do that, you might want to read the Scrum guide one more time, right? Before you do that, okay? And if you can read the Scrum guide, that would be good as well, for those that want to take the exam, okay? Good. Okay. So we're going to start with user stories now. I'm thinking, should we do break first or should we continue? Okay, so we'll go on break at 9. We'll go on break at 9, okay? If you have any question before we go here, any questions? So that I know that part is covered. Any questions? No questions.
Sorry, this is Mohammed. I asked a question in the group, and I think I've been hearing about Jira and all these things. So I just wanted to know, is it part of what I can to learn, and is it part of the tools for Scrum? I just want to know.
Yes. So remember when I talk about agile mindset, I talk about the fact that agile is a mindset, right? That for you to be agile in nature, you need to uphold the core values. You need to be guided by the principle, and you manifest them through different practices, right? Tools and all those things. So some of the tools used in agile in Scrum too is Jira and Conference. So when we're doing simulation, I'm going to show you how that is done. We're going to move our stories, right? Our story cards into Jira, right? I'm going to show you all those things. So I'm going to show you Jira and I'm going to show you Conference. And I'm also going to show you Mural. Mural is a tool used for collaboration. So we'll do that through the simulation. So the simulation will be like a walkthrough, okay?
Okay, thank you very much. All right.
Okay.
But are we going to still have to learn it outside whatever you showed is a simulation, or is just that one time it's okay for us to practice more and just be conversant with it?
Yeah, when I finish showing you, when you start your project, your Salesforce project, as a team, you come together, you use Jira, right?
Okay.
So when they put you guys together in a team, you use Jira to implement. You use Jira to manage the story.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Because after teaching you, if you now practice it, you realize that it's easy. And if you go for an interview, you put it there. You know how to use Jira because you've actually used it, right?
Yes. I was actually even asking because I do a session where I will just, because I've learned it from Motive Tutters, and I put it there, and because like I said, I'm new in all this atmosphere. So I do a session where maybe what I've learned is not what is enough. Probably I need to learn the app somewhere else. But yes, thanks for the clarification. All right.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go into user story and estimation. So we already know what happened during a sprint. We know how that happens. We know the rules and we know the artifacts. Okay. So user stories. So requirements, most of the requirements you're going to use in Scrum is going to be in form of user stories, right? Some stories might not be, some of the stories might not come, some of the requirements might not come in form of a user story. It might come in form of some technical requirements, right? But most of the business requirements, what you're going to be implementing, those features you're going to be implementing for the users will come in form of a user story, right? And those features will happen. Then these features will lead to different epics. They will have user stories, and each user story will have acceptance criteria, right? So these requirements in form of user stories is just telling you that through identification, right, you elicit your user your requirement. It goes through elaboration and design. It does refining, ready, you develop them, you test them, you do user acceptance testing, the user will accept them, then to be in production. So what this is saying that it's talking about user story lifecycle, right? So what does this mean? It means that, all those requirements we are gathering, they are just different features that our users need that needs to be implemented. It's still the same story that will give the developers to develop. They will build it. After they finish building it, the quality assurance person will test it. The users will test it. Then we'll have those stories in production in form of an application, right? So this is just telling you how those stories are being the life cycle of those user story. And that's why it's very important that your user story needs to be clear, right? You need to understand it because this is what the users are going to use at the end of the day, right? So it's more like you're trying to understand what the user need, you document it, you build it, you test it, you give it back to the user to start using in form of application, okay? So most of the time when you're writing all this thing, you want it to be very clear, right? So, and this is one of the most important thing you're going to use in a Scrum team, right? It's very key. This is one of the major things. If you're a business analyst or you're a product owner or you're a consultant that you're going to be putting together in a Scrum team. So what does story mapping looks like? So this is what it will look like. Remember I talked about this picture of the team. This is what it looks like, for example. So in this situation, the user is saying they want to organize their emails. They want to manage their emails. They want to be able to manage calendar. They want to manage contacts, right? So this will be the features that we want to implement for them. Now, for this to happen, they've broken it down into epics, right? So they say for you to be able to organize your email, you need to be able to search for emails. You need to be able to file the email, right? Now, this feature, they broke it down into these 3 epics that for you to be able to manage your email, you need to be able to compose your email. You need to be able to read your email. You need to be able to delete your emails, right? So these are now epics, right, that will help with achieving this feature, right? Now, if you look at this organized email, they said these are the 2 epics that will help to achieve this feature that we were trying to give to the customer. Now, this same epic is search email is massive, right? They're saying that file email is a large story. Can we break it down? Right? So now, search email, they started breaking it down. If you want to search by email, how do you search? Right? They say, oh, you need to be able to search by keyword. For you to be able to search email for organization, you want to limit the search to one field. You want to search by attachments, right? You want to search by subfolders. So what they are doing here is that they look at this epic, which is called search email, and started breaking it down into smaller stories, right? Now, These smaller stories is what we call story cards. Okay? The same thing with this epic. They'll break it down into smaller stories. Compose email, they break it down into smaller stories. So what they did here was they took each of the feature, they broke it down into epics, then into user stories, right? Now, this is not a user story. This is just called a story card. Now, this story card, you are now going to write it in form of a user story, right? You're going to write it in form of a user story, and it's going to have acceptance criteria, okay? So now, what happened here is that they've listed all the story cards, right? Now, they will now look at it and say, what do we want to achieve in release 1? What should be our minimal viable product, right? That is how they were able to separate this to say, all the ones in this first place is our release 1. Everything in this second box is our release 2. Everything in this third box is our release 3. Now, what is in release 1 is their MVP. They might say that release 1, in 3 months, we should have completed all this, right, to have our release 1. Then another release 2 in another 3 months, another release 3 in another 3 months, right? Now, this story card, they will now take it and make sure that they write user stories for each of these story cards with acceptance criteria, okay? Which will now lead me to what makes a good user story. So a good user story must have what? Who wants that to happen? What do they want and why do they want it, right? Who wants something? What do they want and why do they want it? And they must have acceptance criteria, which means that acceptance criteria is what we're going to use to accept it, to say, okay, yes, it was properly done. We accept it. And it must have supporting models. Supporting models can be in different formats. I will show you an example of a supporting model, right? A supporting model to support that story for better understanding. You understand? So that it will be easier. You know those designs that we talk about, UX, UI design, they are supporting models. They are supporting documentation, processes, VCO, all those flow charts you do. Those are supporting models that can help the story. Okay? Now, this is an example of user story templates. As a user, I want so that I can remember the who, what, and why. The same thing here. As a who, fill in the stakeholder type. As a administrator, as a student, as a, fill in who the stakeholder type is. As a marketing manager, as a sales officer, fill in the stakeholder type. I want, as a marketing manager, I want a prospect field, right? So that I can manage my incoming clients. You get? So that is how you put that user story together. Now, when you put that user story together, and how do you get this user story? Is by eliciting, by discussing, right? The product owner will discuss with the stakeholder, we understand what they want or what the team wants, and it will be able to put all these stories together. Now, this is what the acceptance criteria will look like. Acceptance criteria is just easy. I'll show you an example now, right? You put the details of, if this story is completed, right? You put the details of what will make, when you are doing testing, this is what you are going to be checking to say that, yes, this story is complete. This story is good. This story is accepted. Additional details like the supporting models, you add it to it, right? If your acceptance criteria is in this format, given, when, then, it means that the testing is going to be automated. Remember when I was teaching you in quality assurance, I told you guys about manual testing and automated testing. If you get to a team and they are writing the acceptance stories in this format, given, when, then, so you should understand that that testing will be automated. Okay? Any questions before I go on?
So if it's not going to be automated, what will be the prefix, the starting statement?
Okay, let me show you an example. Second. Okay, I have a sample here. Okay, so if it's not automated, it's just, remember that story card I told you, right? Remember when we add Epic, we now add story card. This is a sample of a story card now, login, right? Now, this is the story. As a web user, I want to log in into Yinka's Kitchen so that I can order my food when hungry. Acceptance criteria for the login page is on the login page, there should be 2 fields for email and password. Look at the supporting model, email and password. There should be a call to action called forgot password at the bottom of the page. See, forgot password, right? When I click on the call to action, it should take me to forgot password page. So this place should be clickable, right? If I click it, it will take me to another page. There should be a remember me option box at the ladder of the bottom. Remember me. There's a box here called remember me. There should be a message saying remember me. This is the box for the first acceptance. This is the second one. There should be a message remember me. There should be a call to action called login at the ladder page. A call to action called login at the ladder page. Okay, so these are the supporting models. So if the UX designer put this together, the business have written all the acceptance criteria. When the developer finish developing, he can see that, okay, this is what I should be developing. This is what an idea of what they want. Then when the quality assurance person is testing and the product owner, they will use this acceptance criteria to decide if it's a pass or a fail, right? If it's a pass, then good. If it's a fail, they will put all the details and put a bug in Jira to show that it is a fail, so that the developers can fix it. Does it make sense to you?
Yes, it does really make sense. Thank you.
Good. Okay, so, and I said you can break your story, you can split story using different ways, workflows, you can use CRUD is create, read, update, delete, right? An admin can enter user data, an admin can list, an admin can edit, you write the reasons why they should be able to do all that. It can be through user experience, through variation. There are different ways you can break down your user stories, different ways, right? You just need to keep learning every day of how you can be a better at writing your user stories, okay? You have to keep learning. So now, the Scrum Master, if a product owner doesn't know how to write user story, you need to be able to tell them what makes up a good user stories. What should they have in their user stories, right? You don't even have to write that user story, but you need to be able to teach them like I'm teaching you now, okay? So yesterday we talked about prioritization, right? When you're working as a Salesforce consultant, a business, Salesforce business analyst, you need to be able to do prioritization because the user always wants everything, right? But you need to know, right? What is priority? What is priority to the user, right? So most of the time, there are different ways that you can do that. I've not used most of the ones here, but the ones I've used before is the Moscow one. Moscow is the most popular one. In short, I don't know any organization that don't really use Moscow. Moscow is like a must have, should have, could have, or won't have, right? So most of the time, you will tell them which one are the must have, which one do they really want, what are the must have, right? But most of the time, you see that they want everything. but you still have to look for a way to prioritize it, that which one is more important. And that's why we say the product owner is always a value maximizer. He looks at the one that will give most value. Okay. This I put together because these are like major criteria for prioritization. They look at what is going to improve the ROI, what is going to reduce cost or risk, what is how does it affect marketing competition, right? Is this something that when we do it, we're going to be better off than our competitor, right? Anything that has to do with legal and compliance, they have to do it. There's one project they are implementing in my office now, Bill 101 or Bill 96. When the government brought out that every content that has English must also have French for important documentations and all that. So they are, implementing that at the moment, right? So anything that has to do with legal compliance regulation, they work on it. Dependencies is also a form, a ways you can use for prioritization, right? Triple constraint, they're just talking about the cost. Money can also affect how you prioritize, right? Quick wins, there are sometimes you want to quickly get quick wins. You quickly want to do those things because they will give you leverage, right? So these are ways in which you can prioritize. Okay. So I would let us take 5 minutes break so that we can rest our brain, take a walk and come back, then we'll continue. So when we come back, we're going to do definition of ready, definition of done, and we'll talk about estimation, and I'll show you how to do estimation I'll show you the estimation that is common that is being used. Okay. 5-minute break. Okay. If you have any question, please let me know. Okay. So we said we want to talk about definition of ready. Let me quickly go back and show you something. Remember when we were here, 1 second, when we said that the product backlog will be refined, right? Before we're ready to go into our sprint planning. And we said that for every story, for every issue we are taking out of the backlog, right? It must meet the definition of ready before it goes into our sprint backlog, right? Now, this is a way the team look at what it means for it to be ready, right? So before a story is ready, this is what they look at. They say definition of ready. They do what is called invest, right? So for every criteria to enter into a sprint, for that story, right? When do you say this user story is ready so that you don't have to do any rework, right? It's more like you're setting expectation, right? You don't want a situation where you take the story into the sprint and you're unable to do any work, right? Because at the end of the day, what's the point of taking the story into the sprint? And you're now saying there's a dependency. We are waiting for this team to get this ready. We are waiting for this team to, what's the point? Then you'll not be able to achieve anything during the sprint. So for the story to be ready to go into the sprint, we do what we call definition of ready, and invest is the most popular one that is being used, right? So the first of the invest is I. We say the story must be independent, right? Which means that it does not depend on any other story, right? Dependency is unavoidable. There'll be a lot of dependency, but you need to understand that for that story, for you to start working on it, there is no dependency. Either the dependency has been already worked on, right? Before you move that story to the sprint, right? The second one is it must be negotiable, right? So it is not like a final contract, right? It's just a starting point for discussion, right? So how would I put it? There should be flexibility, right? You should be able to negotiate that story, right? The story must be valuable. Remember what we call the product owner? We said the product owner is a value maximizer, right? So the product owner is making sure that that story adds value to the end user, to the customer that want to use that product, right? So it must be an advantage to the user, right? The story must be estimatable. You should be able to estimate the story. If you can't estimate the story, then you don't have an idea, right, of what the story is. You don't have an idea. So you should be able to estimate that story. Then it shows that that story is ready. The story is small. What that story means is that you should be able to work on it between 3 to 10 days. You don't put a story that 30 days, you still not be able to work on it. 40 days, you still not be able to work on it. You are still working on the same story. Then it is not ready for the sprint, right? It should be something that should be solved between 3, that you can achieve between 3 to 10 days. And it must be testable, right? So that means each story must have acceptance criteria so you can test it, okay? So this is what most people use to define their definition of ready. I hope that is clear. Now, we've done definition of ready. We understand that we have to use invest to determine if our stories are ready to be moved into the sprint. Now, we also have definition of done. Someone asked yesterday, that is definition of done the same thing as acceptance criteria? No. Remember, acceptance criteria is for each of the user story. It must have an acceptance criteria. So each of the user story you are moving from the product backlog, it must have an acceptance criteria, right? For you to accept that story, right? Definition of done is for the whole, like this sprint, for we to say that we are done in this sprint, right? Our definition of done, what is it, right? So it must be agreed by the team. Some team will say it must have been demoed and it must have been tested and approved by the product owner. It must follow technical excellence. Technical excellence means like the way we write our code, we have a way we must write our code. So nobody will write it in another format. This is the way the team write code. So eliminate technical debt, right? So everybody will agree to that definition of done. We must store our bugs in Jira, or we must store our bugs in Rally. Everyone is agreeing to the definition of done. Okay, Loretta, you said I should explain the definition of ready. Remember when we were looking at Scrum, right? When we're looking at Scrum, in a nutshell, we said this product backlog, there are stories that have been refined already, right? We want to now move the stories to sprint backlog, but we said that for any story we move to the sprint backlog, it must meet the definition of ready, right? And we said that for everything here, when we are done, it must meet the definition of done. Now, I'm not explaining that definition of ready, this is what most organizations use to determine definition of ready. Invest, right? The story must be independent, right? So it's not depending on another story, right? For you to be able to work on it in the sprint, right? So it must be negotiable, right? You need to be able to negotiate it as a discussion. It should have some flexibility, right? It should be valuable. Remember, we said the product owner is the value maximizer. It should be valuable to the end user, right? So it should be something that is useful to the end user. It must be estimatable, right? So you need to be able to estimate that story, because at the end of the day, if you don't have an idea, that means you don't know if the story is going to finish in 20 days or 30 days, right? It must be small, meaning that you should know that this item I'm working on, I should be able to finish it within 3 to 10 days. If it's more than that, then it's not worth it. That means you should break it down. That means it's too big, right? Then testable. For every story you have, you should be able to test it. And the test, how you will test it, so you have to use either those acceptance criteria that you've put in place for each of the story to test it. So it should be testable. So it must satisfy the condition, Yeah, it must meet the condition of satisfaction. Those are the acceptance criteria you put in place. Okay, I hope that is clear. Okay, so that's the definition of ready. Then I said definition of done is not the same thing as the acceptance criteria. Acceptance criteria is for each user story, but definition of done is for the whole, everyone has agreed to it. Our definition of done can be, we've removed every defect that is possible. The work has been approved by the product owner. We follow technical excellence, all those things, right? The team will agree. This one is different for every team, even in the same organization, different team will have their different definition of done, right? So, but there's always what we call definition of done. So for every sprint, right, when you are finishing that sprint, you make sure that it meets your definition of done before you say you're done with that sprint. Okay? Now, relative versus absolute estimation, right? There's what we call traditional estimation. I will not go into that traditional estimation because we're going to do it in project management, right? In agile, like in agile world, most of the time, especially in Scrum, this is not in Scrum guide, but you're going to need it, right? What we do here is what we call relative estimation, right? Not absolute estimation. We're doing relative estimation. So what do we do here? We relate things to each other to determine the estimation. So we are relating this to say, okay, this is a small. If this is a small, how complex will this one be, right? So you're focusing on the size and complexity. So I'm going to give you an example now, and we are all going to determine it. So let's say that I want to eat. I want to eat right now. I have orange, I have watermelon, and I have yam. Which one will be easier for me to quickly eat now? Which one is based on the size and based on the complexity? Which one out of orange, yam, and watermelon will be easier to quickly eat?
Orange.
Good. Orange, right? So you've looked at the three items I want to eat, which is the orange, the yam, and the watermelon. And you said that orange, based on the size and the complexity, is the easiest for me to eat, right? Now, you all that thought. Now, so what we do is we do what we call relative estimation, right? But that relative estimation, some people will use what we call T-shirt sizing, which is small, medium, large. Some people will use planning poker, Fibonacci series. I'm going to show you what Fibonacci series look like, right? Some people will use bucket system, dot voting, affinity mapping, ordering method. But the most common one is the planning poker and the T-shirt sizing. Okay? Planning poker and the T-shirt sizing. This is what the T-shirt sizing look like. They'll say, okay, so now you said the orange is a small, right? They will look at it this way. Okay, if it's a small, in relation to the watermelon and the yam is small. Now, there's what we call the Fibonacci series, because this T-shirt sizing is also Fibonacci series, but they use it for, when you have a lot of stories, maybe they are still in epic formats, then you are now using this to size it, right? Some organization will do this small, medium, large, Excel. They might change the number and say this one is a 1, this one is a 3, this one is a 5, right? But most of the time, T-shirt sizing is used for relate big items, epic and all that. So Fibonacci series is for planning and that estimation, right? This is on the story level now, on the story level, right? They use what we call Fibonacci series, right? The series is also related. The series is saying that if you have your first item, it's like a system, like a relative where you decide to use other numbers, like so importance. So let me explain this in a simple way. So look at these numbers now, right? This is the way Fibonacci series work. It's saying that the first item is a 1, right? If the next item in relative to this, if it's double the efforts that you need to get that stuff done, is going to be a 2. If your next item, right, will double, if your next item is relatively bigger than this second item, is going to be a 3. If your next item is relatively the size of this third one and this one, is going to be a 5, right? If your next item is relatively and has the complexity that is bigger than this 5, it should be a 8, right? So you are going to be taking items. You want to know what your smallest item is. What is your smallest story? Or your story card, which one is easier to implement? The smallest one is going to be a 1. Every other story you take, you are going to compare it to this 1. This other story, let's say, for example, login page, payment gateway. Login page is going to take me, for example, a 1 to implement. Payment gateway, the complexity, the effort it to take me to implement payment gateway, is it going to be the same 1? No, right? So for example, now, let's now go back to our story. Orange, watermelon, and yam. We've all agreed that orange, right, is a 1 because of the size and the effort it will take me to eat orange. The next one, watermelon. Is it the same effort that it will take me to eat watermelon and orange? I want answers. Is it going to take me the same effort to eat watermelon and orange?
No.
Why?
No.
Why?
Because of the size of the fruits.
Because of the size of the fruit, right?
And the preparation.
Complexity.
The preparation. We are going to cut it. We are going to remove the seed, right? It's going to take me more effort, right? So if you say orange is going to take you 1, if you say it's a 1, how will you classify watermelon? Is it double the effort of 1, or is it even more than double the effort?
Between 3 and 5, 3 or 5.
Exactly, because you've looked at it, right? Shade too also said 3. You've looked at it and said, no, if orange is a 1, watermelon is taking me double. It's taking me more than double, right? It's not a 1. It's not even a 2 because it takes me double effort, right? So, for example, maybe you said 5 and Shade said 3. Both of you will now argue it out in terms of the Scrum Master. Your role will not be, oh, Shade said 3. I don't know who was speaking just now.
Abigail.
Abigail, you said 5. Oh, Abigail, why did you decide 5? Right? Abigail, you now give more points to say, oh, maybe Shade was just thinking that we cut it. You might now say that, oh, when you cut it, there are seeds, you have to still remove the seeds. Yeah, you are giving more reason why you think it's a 5, right? So based on your explanation, you can now either convince Shade to change the effort level, or Shade will now say, oh, the seed, no, when you cut it, the seed automatically fall off. Oh, Abigail will say, oh, really? Okay, man, I'll pick a 3. You get? So that's how that discussion is done within the group to determine that estimation. So now for yam, how will you now estimate yam in relation to orange and in relation to watermelon? Do you think it's the same effort it will take you with watermelon, or do you think it's more effort to eat yam?
I think it's more effort because you get to peel and then you get to cook.
Exactly. So it's much more effort. So it's going to be either 8 or a 13, right? Because it will take much more effort. So let's say, for example, it's going to take me a 13. What they will now tell you is that, oh, that is a big story. Can we break it down more? So they can now break that yam into 2 to say, let's break 1 effort and complexity will be cooked yam. No, one effort and complexity will be cut the yam, wash the yam, and have it stored. That's one story. The other story will now be cook the yam and eat. So that you can now break it. Because by the time you break it, cook the yam and eat might now become an 8. Right? Then the cut the yam and wash will now become a 5. You understand? Instead of having it as a big story like that, it will now be very complex. It might be too big to achieve in one sprint. You now break it down. So that's how the team determines that. So I want to show us how that estimation is done. I'll show you an example using planning poker. So what we are going to do left before we go is, what we're going to do before we go there, we're going to do planning poker. We are going to try and estimate something now. After that, I'll show you a video of how a team is doing that, right? And I feel we're going to end there because it will be 10 by the time we finish that. Then when we come back on Monday, we'll start with velocity. So I will show you how to do velocity, how to do average velocity, and how to do average velocity and burn down charts. I'll show you that on Monday before we start our simulation. Is it best practice to estimate using ideal days? I didn't see it as an estimation technique on your deck. Ideal days. So I'm going to talk about that, right? You know, when I mentioned the hours, right? So some team, they prefer to do that ideal days. They do it in days, right? Because they want to do capacity planning. But some team just focus on using story points and do their velocity. And over time, they understand their velocity. I have a team where we use velocity in such a way that even when you say a 3, I understand what a 3 means because I've been with that team for so long. So when they say a 3, I have an idea that it will take about 3 days. You get what I'm saying? If they say a 5, I know it's a 5 story point. It will take them about 4 days, 5 days, right? But some teams still estimate using ideal days because they are not just comfortable using that that story point, especially if you work in an organization where the leadership just want to know the days, right? But ideal days, absolute is more when you do the traditional way of working. But a lot of people have also implemented that into Agile. And the truth is that when it comes to estimation technique, is not something in Scrum. It's what you and your team will come up with. And that's why they say Scrum itself is intentionally not complete, right? It gives you a guide, a framework, right? But some of these things, you and your team has to agree on it. I'm going to show you that ideal days as well when we are doing simulation and how that is also implemented in Jira using ideal days. Okay. So let's do our planning poker. Okay, I'm going to start again. So this is how you're going to use it, right? In some organization, they have the planning poker already. In some organization, they don't have planning poker. So you might just use it if it's allowed. If it's not allowed, I'll show you how you can do voting on morale. Okay, most organizations will have morale or they will have what we call mirror, right, for your collaboration. Okay, so I'm going to put the name of the game where moving houses. Okay, so it's actually not that we're using the Fibonacci series. Yes, we're using the Fibonacci series. You can use the t-shirt sizing too, right? So we're using the Fibonacci series. We're going to create our game. Okay, so let me put the story cards. So I'm going to add an issue here. I will say move microwave, right? I will say Move microwave. I'll say move dishwasher. I'll say move a fridge. And I'll say the last one, move a 3-seater. Okay, so we have all our issues. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to invite you to play. But when you are coming in, come in like you are coming to deal, right? I'll be the Scrum Master here, so I won't be dealing. Okay, when you come in, this is where you get your point from to decide on each of the issues. So I'm going to put in the charts. So you can click on the link and come into the planning poker. I can see K, I can see Mohammed. Come in like you're coming to deal, okay? Don't come in as a spectator. Come in like you're coming to deal. Okay, good job. Okay, so we'll start now. So now we're going to take the first issue. What we want to do here, let's start with microwave, right? So let's say microwave is the smallest first. So let's start with microwave. So if we know our story point for microwave, we'll now use it as a relative estimation for the others. So we start with microwave. So we are looking at microwave as the orange. So even for the microwave, we need to estimate how long will it take us. So we are relating it to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's start. Let's say you have to pick between 1, 2, 3, right? Because we're saying this is the smallest, right, of it. So we're starting with microwave first. So I'm going to say vote. Vote now. So how do you vote? You're going to pick what you think it will take you to move a microwave to the house. You are going to pick the number from the bottom of your screen. You will see this Fibonacci series at the bottom. Okay? If you cannot pick, that means you came in as a spectator. You're not supposed to come in as a spectator. Okay? Okay. I can see someone already reviewed the card, right? I was supposed to be the one to review the card. I should have blocked you guys from revealing the cards. Okay, so now we've revealed the cards. So if you look at this, the cards, you can see, I can see a 2, a 1, and I can see RB saying 13. Who is RB? Why did you say 13? Why do you think it's a 13? Oh God, some people are picking, they are trying to. Okay, RB is not speaking, so let's leave that. Let's go on. So what I'm going to do is, let's say that a microwave is a 3, right? To move the microwave is a 3. So which is our orange now? A microwave is a 3. Now we want to move dishwasher, right? And you are relating it to a microwave. I know we were unable to discuss the microwave, that we're relating it to a microwave, right? So how long do you think it's going to take you to move the dishwasher? So I just wanted to understand how that discussion happened, right? Someone has clicked on it. Can you guys vote now? I'm going to reveal the card. So we have Who is clicking on it? Stop clicking on it. Okay, I'm going to stop this. I need to stop you guys from clicking. Okay, so you guys won't be able to do it anymore. Okay, so now we're going to vote again. Okay, so to move the dishwasher, how long do you think it's going to take you? You guys can vote now. I'm going to review the card now. Okay, so I can see some people did not vote because I didn't wait for them to finish. So, but I can see that Abi, BC, Sheun, Shade, RB, Eki, Mohammed, Bobo, K, Ruki. Yeah, so you guys pick 8, which is good, right? It means that you guys feel it is 8, right? But I want to know why Temi is picking 13. So Temi and Miai, you guys pick 13. So why do you think is a 13? To move the dishwasher, why do you think is a 13? Can any of you speak?
For me, I feel like moving the dishwasher, you have to disconnect the water supply. Like you need to have some form of plumbing skills and mechanical skills. So that's why I picked 13.
Okay.
It's a process. It's not just it's a process for me.
Okay, good. Thank you. Jazz, why did you pick a 5? Jazz or T, you guys pick 5. Why did you pick a 5?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I actually picked a 5 because looking at my experience in disconnecting a dishwasher, this is not the first time I'm doing it. And in comparison to a microwave, I've done it before. So it's going to be a lot easier. So I'm more experienced in disconnecting dishwasher. And at the same time, I'd already looked at it prior to me coming into the meeting, and I understood that the dishwasher was already disconnected. And so it's going to be a lot easier. So in comparison to microwave, I chose a 5.
Okay, so we can see where Becca is coming from, right? Becca is talking before because she has experience. She's talking based on her experience. When was he Temi that spoke the other time, right? When she was speaking, she was talking about the processes, things to consider, right? The processes in terms of she's looking at, to remove this, to add this, to do this, it takes a lot of effort, right? I want Shade or RB or Eki. Why did you guys pick an 8? Did you consider what Temi said when you were picking an 8? Did you put all that into consideration, or you were just looking at moving the dishwasher into the house and you feel like it's a bit heavier than the microwave? Did you consider the process of connecting it, removing it, and all that? Was it part of your thinking when you picked it?
Yeah, for me, it was part of my thinking. And the reason I picked 8 was because in relation to the effort that you put into moving the microwave, which we had agreed and estimated as a 3, I believe. So I figured that, yes, moving a dishwasher will require more effort, and 8 will be an ideal number to show that much more effort, to get it done. So yes, I did put into consideration all that will be done to get the dishwasher moved.
To 8. Okay, good. So that has been put into consideration. So tell me, based on that discussion, do you think that an 8 will be appropriate, or do you still think it's going to be a 13? right? We've already knocked out T, right, for picking 5, right, and Becca. We've knocked them out because we feel like they are talking based on experience. So we are looking at from the fact that if what is not everybody that had that experience on the team. So we know that, okay, 5 is out because Becca has more experience. So she's looking at it from an experience perspective. Now, based on what Sade said, do you think that an 8 is sufficient in relation to the microwave? If microwave is a 3, and remember microwave also have connections as well. If we've all agreed that microwave is a 3, do you think 8 is sufficient for the dishwasher?
Sorry, it's he that spoke.
Okay.
Not Davey.
Okay.
So for me, I don't know. I'm sticking to my 13 because microwave, you just unplug it from the power supply, but the dishwasher is a different ball game. So I feel like it's still more effort. And then there are some dishwashers, they're actually attached to your cupboard. That's how they set them. So looking at that, like, so there was no breakdown on what kind of dishwasher or how it's placed.
Mm-hmm. So that would have been,
exactly.
So that would not be the discussion in the team. So now say, what kind of dishwasher is this? Mm-hmm. Oh, it's the one that, okay, you can easily plug in. Oh, okay. That discussion will now help to have more understanding, more description about what we actually want to do. Even based on that discussion, you'll be writing more acceptance criteria to that card based on that discussion. So that is how the team will decide. So if A still believe that it should be a 13, what now happens is that the team will now re-estimate. Right? When the team re-estimates, right, based on that, if the similar result, then they take that similar result. But if it's not a similar result, they will just go with what the average agreement is. Okay, Mohammed.
Okay, I think I understand where AE is coming from, but I think there's something that probably I am understanding, and I think probably I want to clarify that when we're even relating them, we also have to understand that both processes are going to start from 0. So the next one, what we are relating to the other is not starting from 3. And to be honest, even microwave that we are putting at 3, I think is because it's not the normal typical countertop microwave. A microwave that is even 3 already is part of those ones that are always attached to the upper cabinet, which is also similar to what Ihage is trying to sorry, I don't know if I pronounce that well. Yeah. He's trying to conceptualize. So, and in terms of plumbing connections, I don't know which he's trying to say, but I know in the modern ones, just like the way we have the washing machines, simple connector just from the back, plug and play is what is needed. So apparently, most of another thing that is even supposed to be considered is the weightlifting. I mean, maybe you have to need an extra hand to carry it. So both processes are starting from 0. And also the microwave that we have used already is we are using a closer microwave, a bigger version of microwave for it to be a 3, in my own perspective.
Thank you, Mohammed, for that. So you see that because of what AE said, Mohammed is now taking us back to the story we estimated before that. Did we actually do that story well? If we are talking about the process and all that, what kind of microwave did we even agree to 3? You can see. So even that story is now taking us to the back one for us to go and review again. And that is actually what happens in the team naturally. Thank you, Mohammed, for that. Sade?
Thank you, Florence. I'm still on this estimation issue. As a Scrum Master, how do you guide against instances where the developers are going beyond trying to get clarity on the user story you're trying to refine and then trying to solution it there in the meeting, and you find that the refinement session is going on and your 1 hour is up and you've only been able to refine 1 or 2 stories because they're taking things out of context. I want to believe that the purpose of a refinement session is to point stories, estimate, okay, what's this story about? How much effort is required? But then in real life, you find them, trying to, solution and going beyond. I mean, just tell me how much time or how much effort, estimate the story. If you have questions, I will answer. But, how do you guide against things like that as a Scrum? How do you even know when they're going overboard?
Shade,
and manage your time.
That's the most difficult part of this work, right? Especially if you are not from the technical world and you're managing technical people, it can be crazy, right? But what I've done over time, right? So Shade, what I do is I learn to be firm. It's difficult because I also don't want them to see me as a blocker, right? So I learn to be very firm in terms of, I try to make them understand that if we don't do this refinement, if we don't conclude it, we're going to have another meeting, right? Guys, we're not solutioning. In sprint planning, we'll start solutioning. Focus, okay? So that they can, agree. So what we do is we estimate in sprints, in backlog refinements, and we also estimate in sprint planning, right? So the first estimate in backlog refinement is just to have an idea. When we now start breaking down the work in sprint planning, then we can give, full estimation. And that's why when you talk of ideal days. So when we get to sprint planning, some team will now use ideal days to actually do that, but some will still focus on using this the story pointing. But you have to be firm. This is where you speak up. When you see that it's going overboard, you want to tell them that let's focus on getting the estimation. Okay, yes. And that is why I said sometimes your backlog refinement can be 2 meetings. If they don't want to have 2 meetings, then they need to be able to give you those estimation easily, right? You just need to keep guiding them. You need to keep teaching them, right? One thing you can do is in your retrospective, you talk about it in retrospective, that during backlog refinement, you notice that they are always trying to solution. At that point in time, we are not solutioning. We are just trying to understand what we are trying to do so that we can have estimations and all that. So if you keep telling them in retrospective, it will get to them. Something you keep saying all over and all over again. Before you know it, the team will adapt. They will understand. And anytime they hear your voice in backlog refinement, they will adjust because they know that you've mentioned it several times in retrospective. Okay? So this is how the estimation happens, okay? So, and this planning poker is what you can use. You can also use morale, right? And all that. So before we go, we're just going to watch a video and that's where we're going to end it. That video is just to show us what happens in backlog refinement, how the team estimates and re-estimates. So we do that and we close from there. Then when we, you should try and do the homework. I'll remind them to send you the question. When we come in on Monday, we'll do velocity, average velocity, burn down chart before we start simulation. Okay, so I'm going to play the video now and we're going to watch that and we go from there. Okay. One second, I want to optimize sound.
Of our Scrum training series, the Backlog Refinement Meeting. I'm Michael James. I help businesses do Scrum and related Agile practices. While Backlog Refinement falls inside the efficient...
You guys can hear, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Named meetings in Scrum, everyone's discovered a need to do it. I like to do this a couple work days before the next sprint planning meeting, giving the product owner a little time to revise priorities before commitments are made. Let's go into a team room and see this happening. The Scrum Master you're about to hear is played by a real-life Scrum Master named Nicole Lewis. Pay attention, I'm going to quiz you during the scene. At the Backlog Refinement Meeting, also called Backlog Grooming, we have a product owner, a cross-functional, self-organizing Scrum development team, and the Scrum Master. This team has just started developing a student information system to help schools track student progress.
Hello, I'll be facilitating our backlog refinement meeting. Within a 2-hour time box, we'll attempt to clarify and decompose the higher priority product backlog items. As you'll recall from our training, any work that represents business value or consumes time and attention from the team may be worth listing in the product backlog. One objective of this backlog refinement meeting is to create PBIs that are independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and testable. Mr. Product Owner, since you're responsible for the product vision and return on investment, why don't you start by telling us your current priorities?
Based on my vision for this product, here are my top priority items: grades, attendance, event calendar, alumni archives, and scholarship awards. Oh, and I want the pages to look really good. When can you have that done?
We have no idea. It will be done when it's done. Call us when you finish writing the requirements.
We're here to refine the requirements together. Success at Agile requires business people and developers to work together daily throughout the project. In this meeting, let's focus on the top few items only.
I'm just a tester. I don't know anything about development. I mean, do you mind if I play with my phone until you start talking about testing?
Good job. I can see you guys answering the questions. Good job.
Maybe your background and skills were mostly in testing, but now you're a Scrum team member. A Scrum development team is collectively responsible for thin slices of properly tested product every sprint. Let's ask the team what they think of your involvement.
In the past, I've just written code and handed it off to another department for testing. You have years of experience with testing, and now we're in this together. I'd appreciate your expertise in this meeting.
Dude, I don't work for you.
Yes, you do, just as we work for you. On a self-organizing team, we all work for each other.
Oh, okay.
Since this meeting is time-boxed, I suggest focusing on the top item for now, grades. I propose using estimation cards to get a better cross-section of opinions about the effort to get that PBI into potentially shippable form.
This particular team likes to make estimation a game, using 4 cards per person with t-shirt sizes of small, medium, large, and extra, extra, extra large.
We're estimating the effort to complete the grades PBI. Choose a card, then reveal it at the same time as everyone else. Let's hear the reasoning behind these guesses.
I picked small because displaying the grades to students is just a few lines of code.
I picked extra large because I can't imagine how we'd start testing such a vague requirement.
I picked large because I thought the requirement was to allow teachers to update grades, not just display them.
Actually, what I really want is teachers to be able to update grades, students to be able to view them online, and report cards sent to parents each semester. Now I realize I'll need your help refining the grades product backlog item.
The team seems to feel the grades PBI is actually an epic, which can be split into several distinct user stories. This is one of the purposes of this backlog refinement meeting. It turns out most people don't use most features of most products. Even the features they do use can be split into more valuable and less valuable parts. A well-formed PBI toward the top of a backlog is no bigger than a quarter of a sprint, and ideally smaller than that. Maybe we can split the grades epic into more valuable parts to get smaller user stories.
Generating the report cards will be really hard because it depends on the unreliable third-party PDF libraries.
I'm willing to put report cards on the bottom of the backlog for now, if we can at least allow teachers to update grades online. They tend to lose their paper records before it's time to turn them in.
It's often useful to identify who, what, and why in a product backlog item. For example, view grades. As a student, I can see my grades online so that...
So I don't have to wait until I get to school to know whether I'm passing.
Okay, I understand that one now. It has the who, the what, and the why. It's somewhat independent, and it represents distinct business value.
If we work together, it may be small enough to get into a potentially shippable form in a couple of days.
At first glance, it seems testable.
We'll leave room to add some acceptance criteria.
What about update grades? As a teacher, I can update grades online so I no longer depend on administrators to do it for me.
Is this more or less important than view grades?
Prioritize? I want all of these features at once.
And I want a pony.
I suppose view grades has the most business value. If we didn't finish update grades, school administrators could still use the legacy system to update the grades. I wouldn't be very happy about that, though.
Feel free to reprioritize the product backlog at any time.
We're not committing to do the work in this sequence.
No commitments are made in the backlog refinement meeting. Later, when we get to the sprint planning meeting, you'll decide on how much work to take on within one sprint.
Let's try estimating the view grades PBI.
As a student, I can see my grades online, so I don't have to wait until I get to school to know whether I'm passing.
It's just a few lines of code.
I agree it's small. The UI design is simple.
Since this item doesn't alter the database, both the technical risk and the testing effort are low.
I disagree. I picked medium because the previous semester's grades are kept on a different legacy system.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Does this have to work with previous semesters or just the current semester?
I hadn't really thought about it until you asked. I'm really interested in the current semester. We won't need the previous semesters until later on.
Revote.
Looks like I'm the outlier this time. I just realized what a pain it will be to get the table display working on Ethernet Exploiter 6.
EE6? I thought we only had to support Fingerfly now.
That's correct. The district has banned the use of Ethernet exploiter, especially EE6.
Let's make that explicit in the acceptance criteria.
In that case, I'm good with small.
Let's answer this one first. Okay, so that's where we're going to stop. But do you have an understanding now about how they were estimating, discussing, bringing up questions, and trying to re-estimate based on those discussions? Was it clear? Good, good. So now it's clear. So, and remember that because you're a Salesforce consultant doesn't mean you get there. Oh, you want the link to the video? Okay. Not like you will get to the team. You now not talk. You're going to talk. Okay. So everyone is going to talk in the why this is going on. So you're going to give so that you have to be part of the team. Okay. As the estimation is going on. Mohammed, you'll be the last person before we close. You can speak.
So I just want to quickly say something. You know, initially you said the product owner is going to be probably a representative of a union of other, stakeholders who are probably going to be business analysts and the likes. So, but this product owner person, it looks just so vague, like, I will not say like identical, but it just looks like it's just saying what's coming to his head. Is that what is going to really be in real life, or just but stakeholders who will actually have done a little bit of their assignment and know what
before that product owner is speaking that way, he has already done several meetings. He knows what they want. He's going into that Scrum team with knowledge, right? So before they say you are the product owner on that team, we want to implement Salesforce. You already know the problem that the team has, and you know what you guys want to implement. So as the developers are asking questions, you will have answers. If you don't have answers at that moment, you will come back with answers. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You come back with answers. But generally, you have answers. You have more answers because the developers know nothing about it. It's you that know what your team wants. So as they're asking questions, you'll be giving them answers. Even some of you can see the part when they say, oh, I never thought about that. He didn't even think about that. But when they asked that question, he was able to give answer. If you can't give the answer, you go back. When you have your discussion with other stakeholders, you come back with the answers.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
Okay. Great. So much. I will let us stop there. And then on Monday, we'll go into velocity, average velocity, and the rest. Okay. Have a lovely evening. Please try to read the simulation. Tammy, please. Remember to tell Basketki to send those information to everyone, okay?
Okay, not a problem. I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks.